When you press W in a video game, your character starts to move forward. Usually you want to be as fast as possible to make sure you're a harder target to hit than the usual standing still opponent. The idea of quickly moving to avoid getting hit is one, if not the base skill you need to learn if you want to climb the ranks in almost all popular shooter games, like Valorant, a game I love to cover on my channel. This sparked a new question: what is the fastest way to move in Valorant? Well, before I get into that, let's talk about a fast browser. Opera GX, the sponsor of this video. We all have our browser open while playing games. But did you know browsers can heavily impact your RAM and CPU usage? I mean, it's kind of a running gag with Google because the browser just eats RAMs without a sweat. And that's where Opera GX comes into play. With Opera GX, you can manually limit how much RAM and CPU usage GX will use. And same with the network usage of the browser. Which means no more frame drops because you're arguing with people on Twitter or watching a video while playing a game. Which, by the way, with the forced dark mode setting, you'll never feel like getting flashbanged when opening a new tab again. With Opera GX, you can also use Discord and Twitch integrations in the browser. Which basically means no more missing streams or missing communications with your duo. Or e-girl if you're that kind of person. Speaking of, you can actively flirt with your homies in free games that Opera GX actively seeks automatically for you, so you can find and play free games. GX is the browser for gamers, so make sure to check it out by clicking the link in the description. Anyway, enough ads, thank you for supporting the channel by listening to it, and let's get moving over to Valorant. Let's start with the slowest way of moving. You would expect it to be something simple like holding an Odin while crouching, but it actually gets really complicated. First, let's talk about the weapon that slows you down the most. Which weapon do you think slows you down more? The Odin, Operator, or Bucky? I'm not taking the piss here, but it's actually the Bucky. The Odin and the Operator both change your movement speed to 5.13 meters per second, while the Bucky slows you down to a slow 5.06 meters per second. That's a whopping 1.69 meters per second slower than running with a knife. Is 5.06 meters per second the slowest you can move? If we exclude abilities and certain mechanics, then yes. But we want to go as slow as we can go. Let's take a look at potential abilities that could impact our movement speed. We have the Sage Snowballs, Harbor's Water Walls, Astra Suck, Sky Seekers, Chambers Trap, Killjoy's Lockdown, Stuns, and to simplify we are going to take Neon Stuns, and Taking Damage. Which of these abilities should we use? I know it looks really menacing and really complicated, but it actually isn't. Sage's Snowballs, Sky Seekers, and Chambers Trap don't slow you down like you expect them to. They only slow you down to a hard cap. If you somehow through other means already move slower than 50% as you normally would, so if you somehow already move slower than 2.58 meters per second while holding a Bucky, you are completely nullifying those abilities. And yeah, we will go lower than 2.58 meters per second. So we can erase these abilities from the chart, because they won't do us any good. Harbor's Water Walls, or Water Walls, work the exact same, but worse, as they only slow you down by 30%. Once again, we will be going slower than 3.54 meters per second. Now before I get too nerdy with the stats, let's jump over to the answer. I know, we are skipping some possibilities here, but I'll tell you later why. When you get stunned, your movement speed gets set to 0. So if we take a look at this graph, your movement speed will be set to 0 the moment you get hit. Also simultaneously, when your movement speed gets set to 0, your movement starts to recover to the original value. The time it takes to reach your actual movement speed here is always a set duration. In our scenario, the Neon Stun lasts for 3 seconds. So within these 3 seconds, your movement speed will gradually increase back to what it should be. To elaborate on it, this means that if your movement is for some reason 6 meters per second, every second you'll regenerate 2 meters per second. So why did I tell you this and not just eliminate the other possibilities first? And that's because we can use these abilities to stay slowed for longer. The regenerated movement speed per second only regenerates to the value you should have at that point, not the actual movement value. So if you're walking in a Sage slow, you won't regenerate 2 meters per second, but 1, since your movement speed at that point is 3 meters per second. If we really want to be as slow as possible continuously, we should slow ourselves down as much as possible while getting stunned. So these values get smaller and smaller. So to be as slow as possible, you want to be detained, continuously sucked in one spot, while crouching and while being shot continuously by an Odin. So turn on cheats to make sure your movement speed is next to 0. Wow, this took a long time to explain. Okay, now let's get over to the fast movement speed. As we said, the buggy slows you down to 5.06 speed per second. So the next logical thing to figure out is how do we go even faster? The knife. When running with a knife out, you run roughly 6.75 meters per second. Notice that I say roughly here. And that's because from our tests, we didn't always get the same results. And diving into the code didn't help much either. So all the upcoming values are rounded estimates. How do we move even faster than 6.75 meters per second? Just like before with slowing down, we are going to calculate with abilities. The Steam Beacon of Brimstone gives you a 1.2 speed multiplier. So if you run into the Steam Beacon with our knife out, we move at a slightly faster 8.2 meters per second. This is unfortunately also the fastest we can move as a generic character, on a generic map at least. Of course, there are certain character bound abilities that allow you to move even faster than this, but we will get to that later. Let's first get to the max even a simple person like you and me can reach through some inconvenient ways, like the rope on fracture, which moves you at a whopping 15 meters per second, almost double as fast as you would be running while being stimmed up. Now, I want you to take a moment to think about what we could possibly do to move even faster than 50 meters per second as the average Joe. Falling excluded. Anything? No? Well, there's this one really specific scenario where you can go even faster. And you don't even need an ability for it. The answer? It's the target platform in the range. You can actually stand on the board and shoot yourself away. So when you shoot the 50 meters range button thing, you shoot yourself within a second 50 meters away. Thus you move a whopping 50 meters per second. That is the fastest way you can move as the average Joe. 50 meters a second is incredibly fast. Is there anyone of the non-average Joes that can actually beat this record? Announcing and welcoming you to the 2022 VALORANT Olympics. Which ability is the fastest of them all? At the bottom of the list, we have SLOWEST drone. It moves at a slow 4.3 meters per second. That's slower than us with a buggy. Next up, we have Yoru's clone and Sky's ult when it doesn't have a direct line of sight with you, which both have a top speed of 6.5 meters per second. Slightly slower than us with a knife out. And they are also the final abilities that are slower than us, because everything else that is coming up is outrunning us without a sweat. Speaking of running, Sky's dog is next with a solid 7.4 meters per second. Followed by Sky's ult once again, but now it's tracking us. Next up we have Yoru's teleport ball. You know that little ball thing that travels till it gets stuck in a corner? That ball moves at 8 meters per second. When Yoru himself is in his ult, he outruns the ball at a speed of 8.5 meters per second. Neon with her E even outruns Yoru in his ult at a pace of 9.25 meters per second. And Raze, with some perfect double satchel throws, reaches around 9.4 meters per second. Note that this was a rough estimate of our calculations, which means it isn't 100% accurate. Reasons why should be clear if you ever tried Raze yourself. The amount of speed you get from the satchels heavily changes depending on the angle you're looking, movement you already have, etc, etc. Next up, we have the Fate Prowler trilogy, as the Fate Prowler that's not on a trail moves 12 meters per second, and so does the Fate Prowler when tracking someone. Once again, not on a trail. If it is on a trail though and tracking someone, it moves 3 meters per second faster, thus concluding the trilogy of the Fate Prowler. The third fastest way of moving using abilities is Neon's Slide, which moves you at a beautiful 13.69 meters per second. The second fastest ability that moves is Sky's Bird, which moves at a ridiculous 18 meters per second. In my opinion, it's a bit of an overkill as it's already so hard to dodge the flash, but it is what it is. And the fastest way of moving with abilities, and you might have seen this one coming, is Jet with her dash, which dashes her a distance of 10 meters in 0.37 seconds, which calculates to 27 meters per second. Just halfway as fast as you would be with the target practice board. But wait. There is someone even faster than Jet with her dash. Something that moves you even faster than the target board. You can't even see it with the naked eye. The fastest way of transportation in the wall of VALORANT is Chamber with his teleport towers. It's instant when you teleport, duh. Thank you for watching and please subscribe if you made it this far. Also a big thank you to Aura for doing the number research on this video. Please check out his channel in the description for more analytical stuff. Bye bye.